Welcome in, everyone, to the Batfoot Podcast. My name is Damien here with Matt and David. Today, we're going to be bringing you our free agent predictions, a little talk wild manager carousel that we had happen over the past few days, and then something a little special there at the end of the episode. But before we get to all that, David, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing rather well. My team has suddenly decided that they want to, make do some interesting offseason stuff. So that makes me awfully excited for the offseason here. But aside from that, planning a trip to go home there around Thanksgiving. That's been nice, and then just work. But yeah, I'm ready to get towards this holiday season and break into these free agent predictions and uh, start thinking about how these teams can improve. It's the early part of the offseason. Everybody's got the optimism that maybe next year's the year you'll win the World Series, and it's one of my favorite times of year. So with that, how you doing, Matt?
Um, I'm doing pretty good. Do you really think everybody has that optimism? I mean, A's fans are probably not,
Look,
but no, I'm
Hey, they
just
picked up their
what?
manager option.
it's
Yep,
true. It's true. They made a
yep.
move. But yeah, I've been good. I was out of town this weekend. I went up to Nashville for to watch the Auburn versus Vanderbilt football game, and that went well. And got
Did you
to
take your
hang out
hard
with
hat?
others. I should have. That place is an absolute dumpster fire right now. It is totally under construction and takes like an hour to get in and out of, and it's pretty ridiculous. But uh, but yeah, it was still a fun game because my team won, and we'll and then I'm ready to talk about some free agency and some baseball. This off season is going to be pretty interesting, so I'm ready to get into it. How have you been, Damien?
I've been doing good. Just like I said, excited for the off season time. It's one of my favorite times. We've already had a little bit of a wild few days, which we'll get into here in a second. But it's been a lot of fun already. Even the GM meetings have started. We've got some interesting quotes from us from some of those general managers, and then hearing that the trade market's being a little bit more active earlier in the year. So hopefully we get some of that news here soon. But it's just been overall a fun week, and just excited to be in this portion of the year for heading into the holiday season and then free agency baseball. I don't think there's much else that's better, but um, let's go ahead and start with the manager carousel and the part that David's really wanting to talk about here. Um, so we had, what was it, five openings, six openings? It was the Guardians, Padres, the Giants, Angels,
Astros.
um,
Astros,
Astros,
Mets.
Mets.
Yep.
So there were six at a time, and then there was the controversy surrounding Craig Counsell, who was the Brewers manager at the time. His contract ran out November 1st. He was talking to other teams, the Mets and the Brewers specifically. There was a lot of rumors about him going to one of those two places that we thought of. But let's start a little bit earlier in the day before we jump all the way into that part of it. The Guardians ended up hiring former big league catcher, two-time All-Star Stephen Vogt as their new manager early. I think it was early yesterday morning. And then, we kind of got some rumblings that Counsell was going to make his decision later in that day. We were going to figure out if it was the Mets or the Brewers. That kind of really seemed like the only thing. And then I think it was about 11 o'clock my time, Pacific time. We got the bomb from Ken Rosenthal saying that, like, Council's going to manage a team, but it's not going to be the Mets or the Brewers. And then in the meantime, the Mets hired Carlos Mendoza, who is the Yankees bench coach, to be their new manager. And then Rosenthal said that Council's going to go to a team that has an existing manager. That's when all hell and frenzy broke loose, and it ended up being the Chicago Cubs, which then entailed that Dave Ross was going to be fired. So that was just a wild, like, 2-hour period. We still have a bunch of other openings, but just I want to save David's excitement for
Yeah.
the end here. Matt, walk us through your thoughts of that whole kind of like 2 to 3 hour period. Vote getting hired. Where was Council going to go? Then the Mets hiring Mendoza, then Council getting to the Cubs and his record breaking contract, which was 5 years, $40 million, which is kind of in the lines of the Joe Torre type era.
Yeah, so first off, Stephen Vogt, pretty cool for him. He was a pretty beloved clubhouse guy in his career. Had some good years. He was on the Braves World Series team, so was pretty cool. I was pretty happy to see that. And, We'll see what he does, how he does in Cleveland, because that roster is going to need a lot of help from their manager. And then the Carlos Mendoza thing. I don't know exactly what the Mets see in getting a guy out of the Yankees organization, but um, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he might be fine. The Yankees, but even though that they had a rough year this year, they have been a fairly successful team, and that they really, a lot of that has to do with their roster more so than just how their coaching staff is, in my opinion. And then you look at the Craig Counsell thing. That was pretty crazy. Um, I think it was. I mean, obviously it's a good move for the Cubs to bring in Craig Counsell. I think he's a really good manager. I don't know how much exactly managers matter, in the grand scheme of things. Like, I don't think any of these moves are going to just like dramatically change these franchises. But obviously, if you get the best guy you can, and one thing you're looking at, like with the Cubs, they're paying a manager that doesn't really count against your luxury tax payroll. So if that's a way you can improve your team, then just you don't even have to worry about the potential penalties and the luxury tax and losing draft picks and stuff. And if you feel like that's really going to improve your team a lot. So, it's a good move. I don't think anything's going to like be just dramatically different. I think a manager can lose you games, but manager's probably not going to make your team like way better than it is. So the roster is the most important part. But obviously, I think that there were times at the end of the year that David Ross probably could have done a better job managing. I don't think it's really his fault. I think he had a flawed roster, but I kind of hate it for him. He was a beloved Cubs player and got kind of pushed aside. Kind of, I don't know. It was kind of, I don't love the way that it went down for him, but obviously, it's baseball, it's a business, and I mean the Cubs are trying to do the best they can to get the best people in there that they can. So definitely interesting, and we'll see what happens. It's an interesting start to the off season for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Matt. Right, 100% right. The managers are a fairly inconsequential portion of the team, which is why Craig Counsell is currently signed for less than, about a win above replacement for a year, right? I mean, it's usually upwards of $10 million per win above replacement is kind of the typical calculus, and Craig Counsell's making 8 million as the, you know, record-breaking, highest-paid manager contract of all time. So, I think that tells you about what teams feel is the calculus on a manager, where they're worth about a win, right? The good one is, and
Yeah.
the average ones are going to be net zero, and the ones that get fired go negative. But you look at where the Cubs were before yesterday, right? I mean, this was David Ross was on a expiring contract. It was going to run out next year. They were outright not extending him because I think the idea was they wanted to see what would happen if they gave him a roster that was capable of winning, which he's had one time in 2020, and they got swept by the Marlins in the playoffs in the shortened season. So, and that was David Ross's first season. We really don't know what David Ross was capable of, but what it felt like from a day-to-day perspective was that David Ross just didn't get that you need to sometimes change things up and shift things up in order to, generate a little energy in your lineup. He often let veterans, hit out of slumps for long periods of time, and he was very reluctant to go to the young guys. Alexander Canario hit like 300, a home run, a triple. He was very productive in his limited time in September, but he sat for 3 weeks before David Ross even bothered to put him in the lineup because he wanted to trust the guys that got him there. And I have a feeling that rubbed the wrong way on Jed Hoyer and the front office, but it didn't bother them so much that they were going to definitely get rid of David Ross, right? They were going to give him this season, but this was a cutthroat type of move. The type of move you make if you're expecting, if you, this, they're like, this is the only way we're going to get this to happen. It's a move that I have never seen the Chicago Cubs make. They went for Joe Madden, but Rick Renteria was not a beloved Chicago figure. And at that point, the Cubs were very clearly signaling, hey, it's time to go for it for the first time since, the Lou Piniella days. So this move feels much different. than that one did. You know, I really like it. I think it's the kind of thing that you do if you're signaling that it is go time, that we're going to play at the top of the free agent market, we're going to play at the top of the trade market, we're going to operate above the luxury tax. And you know, this obviously is an improvement to a team that doesn't have to, you know, stay, you know, they don't have to stay below the luxury tax, right? I mean, this is a team that's saying, hey, we think Craig Counsell is going to make an impact with more resources than he would have otherwise had. And I'm really excited about that. I think this is it's more what this signals than it is specifically Craig Counsell. I mean, Craig Counsell's a great manager, but how much do managers really matter? Like you said, I don't think that's necessarily what the point is. The point is that the Cubs are willing to make changes when they didn't need to because they believe that it is go time, and that's what makes me really excited.
Yeah, to me, the managers matter enough on the margins that there's a clear upgrade that can be made at certain times. You know, this team, the Cubs team, I mean, they're one Seiya Suzuki catch away from being in the playoffs.
Yep.
And then that flips the whole playoffs in the head because Arizona does not get in the playoffs and they don't make a run for the World Series. They're literally that catch away against the Braves from being in the playoffs. So this was a basically a borderline playoff team. They were good. I don't think anyone really expected them to be much better than they were this year, and regardless. This is just one of those moves of, hey, like this guy just happens to be available. He's at, or if not near, the top 5 of the managers there, and probably pushing to the top 3-ish. I mean, depending on who you talk to, that guy's available. Let's go make that move. And it not only does it steal it from the division rival, but also it shows that we're serious about doing everything we can possibly do to maximize the margins. Because, you know, sure, we say the Seiya Suzuki catch keeps them out of the playoffs, right? There's a bunch of other games that could have just as easily been that with a simple, you know, manager pulling a pitcher at a certain time or going to this bullpen arm instead of that. That's one of the things that Council's done really well is the game flow aspect and knowing when's the right time to do that. That's why I just think that this was the move. Like, not to say that David Ross is a bad manager. I think he's a fine manager. I think he's going to get another opportunity this year. I mean, we've already heard the rumors about the Padres job potentially being, you know, him being a serious candidate all of a sudden for it. And I was listening to MLB radio today. Definitely not Chris Russo's show. Definitely not that guy. But I want to say it was Power Alley with I think Brad Lidge was the one that was talking about it today. And he was basically saying that, like, sometimes managers just have to grow into the position. Like, we don't allow that anymore. We expect managers to come in, even first-time managers, and be good right away. He's like, and sometimes it takes them 4 or 5 years to just really understand things. I think you were starting to kind of see that with David Ross somewhat. Like, not, there was obviously still the stubbornness there, but you were starting to see a little bit, you know, getting better in certain aspects of the game. That's why I think if he gets another opportunity, he might be just fine in it. This was just the cutthroat move by the Cubs to kind of say, like, hey, that guy's there. He's up better than ours. He's near the top. Let's just go make that move now. So it definitely gave us some early on excitement in the offseason for sure. But
I do want
let's,
before we go on, I do want to say one thing. I love David Ross for what he did in Game 6, and I was defending him up until about the Rosenthal tweet to break it. I was on the side of, look, I think he's improving. I think there's definitely things he can work on, but I didn't mind a lot of the stuff he did, and overall he did a pretty good job. And it, you know, it does feel, I do feel bad for David Ross, but I'm I'm uh I'm ultimately a Cubs fan, right, over a specific manager fan. So, you know, this is the right move for the organization. Let's go.
right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump over to our free agent predictions. So we listed, I think it's our top 13 free agents that we wanted to talk about here with it. And we'll go ahead and start with the most interesting one, and that is Shohei Ohtani and the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. Where's he going to go? I'll have 3 different teams right around the same ballpark, but Matt, go ahead and give us your Shohei Ohtani prediction.
Yeah, to start with it, I think all 3 of us kind of agree. We really have no idea what's going to happen here.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Shohei is just he's real quiet. He's not real. Nobody really knows. I think a lot of people expect the Dodgers to be at the top of the list, but nobody really has any idea. Now, back when he signed originally, he basically eliminated any team that was not on the West Coast.
That's the
So
one.
I think that that's an important thing to look at for this is that, like, maybe and I know there's been some rumors that Boston might be a player because of his deal with New Balance being in the city of Boston, and then also having a lot of history with Japanese players. But I think I went with the Giants because they're a West Coast team. They are and they're very, very thirsty for a superstar player. They've tried extremely hard. They've had the number one bid on Aaron Judge last year, and it ended up not working out as he ended up going to the Yankees, or back to the Yankees. They had a deal lined up with Carlos Correa, and it ended up falling through because of the medical. Like, they are not shy right now on trying to bring in a superstar on a free agent contract, and I think that this might be the biggest one they could possibly get. And I think that I really don't know what his contract's going to look like. I mean, it's especially with the injury and stuff thrown into it. There's just no telling what it could look like. But I'll put him down as 12 for 500. It could be 12 for 550. It could be 10 for 500. I just do not know. But I have him going to the Giants, and with very low confidence on that pick. But that's my pick. So.
You want to go, Damien? Or you want me to go?
You go ahead, go. We'll just do it in how we have him listed there.
All right, here's the deal. That's the first thing I did today was I wrote down 5 teams that I thought Otani might go to, and then I went and did all of my other predictions, because I was like, I want to go ahead and pick each player to one team. I'm not going to guess that it's multiple teams take on multiple players, so that may happen in this top 13, right? We might see one team get 2 players. I think that's totally possible. I just didn't do that because I thought it wouldn't be nearly as fun to exclude a bunch of teams to take on 3 to the Cardinals or 3 to the Dodgers or something like that. So I think my 5 teams were the Giants, Dodgers, Mariners, Cubs, Red Sox. And I went through and did the rest of them, and my reasons to not pick teams were as follows. The Dodgers need pitching. Otani can't pitch next year. That's literally it. He might just stay in LA, and everybody kind of thinks that. That's kind of the favorite, so whatever. If he goes to the Dodgers, I totally understand. Mariners are really exciting, but it's also, will the Mariners ownership provide the funds? I don't know. I think the rumor right now is that Otani is so popular in Japan for merch sales, for sponsorship deals, for the team, that he is a cash flow positive investment, even if you spend $500 million, which is absurd. It's the kind of thing that it's going to benefit the teams that have their own TV deal, where their own subscriber base is actively funding the teams of Dodgers, Cubs. Those are the ones that are going to benefit the most from that. Anything with Bally's not as helpful. That's what kind of takes me out on the Giants. The Giants are a perfectly legitimate option, though. I think they're going to be big players here. And the Red Sox, I don't have anything against the Red Sox here. I have them going for another Japanese guy here down the road. So I went with the Cubs. It's a big feeling, and it's only one I made yesterday based on the council thing. Is I think the Cubs are just going to go for big, and they are the one non-West Coast team that Otani listed in his rookie 7 when he narrowed the teams down. The only team that wasn't West Coast was the Cubs, so we know at least he has considered playing for the Cubs in the past. That was several years ago. Lots has changed since then. They could not work it out, but I've just got a feeling, man. This is my kind of big prediction for the Cubs. I think they go get Otani. It's splash time in Cubville, and the Japanese subscriptions to Marquee, they might pay for it. They might help Otani pay for himself. So
David is definitely drinking the Kool-Aid all of a sudden.
yeah, I am.
No, but it's funny that you said the positive cash flow thing, because before you got in the call today, Matt and I were talking, and I literally said the same thing.
Yeah.
I said, whatever team signs Otani, the contract does not matter. All the contract matters for is what your books look like. That is literally it. Because fan revenue, in like
Popularity.
fan popularity, fan investment in the team, like everything skyrockets when you have Shohei Ohtani. Networks will pay you an insane. The Mariners, which is the team that I have him going to here, have a $2 billion contract TV deal already
Mhm.
signed through like 2030, right? Well, if you sign Otani for these contracts that we're talking about, you're going to get a new TV deal in the middle of his contract, anyways. Um, and the jersey sponsors, right? A lot of these teams haven't signed jersey sponsors yet. Could you imagine what a jersey sponsor immediately looks like if your team signs Shohei Ohtani?
Yep.
Like sponsors will be lining up to have that guy put on their logo every single day because he's on every single highlight reel all the time.
Yep.
Like he's such a positive cash flow person immediately anyways that the contract does not matter. So the reason that I went with the Mariners is he's one of the 7 West Coast teams that he listed, or one of his 7 final from the last time. He is really, really close with Ichiro.
Yep.
And we know that connection there. The Mariners have proven that they are willing to do big contracts. They've done Robinson Cano. They had the Felix Hernandez contract at the same time. You have Julio Rodriguez already locked up long term. This would be another investment in that side of it. You don't need to worry about him pitching this year because the Mariners have a ton of pitching already. And the Mariners don't have a big time legitimate left-handed bat. And then you're telling me at the start of your lineup every single day, you're going to get Julio Rodriguez and Shohei Ohtani for the next 10 or 12 years? Like, that's insane. And then you were able to supplement all around that anyways. So I ended up having him go on a 12 for 525. I think my reasoning being is that I think the number is going to be like 500 million, right? We want to hit the $500 million mark or something like that. But I think what Otani will be willing to do is put a couple extra years on at a lower AAV, to where the number for your yearly books don't look nearly as bad, because the way baseball does it, it's based on the average annual value, right? So I don't think he's going to do a 10-year at 500 million, because that's $50 million a year. I think that will be like the original, like, hey, this is the deal we want to sign, but like, let's add 2 years on it, 25 million. That lowers your AAV to, I think, like 43 million, I think is what I figured. That's a lot easier to kind of handle on the year-to-year side. And so I just think the connection that he has to Japan with Ichiro, and then the connections that have already been made there, and the fact that have been willing to spin big before, and he fits almost everything that they need right now. I just think the Mariners have been my team. I've been saying it for a long time too. I think the Mariners are the one for Ohtani. So
I didn't give my number, by the way. My number was 11 for 500. It's
Yeah.
right in the same ballpark. So
yeah. So let's move on to our next guy, and let's do Cody Bellinger. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and start with Cody Bellinger?
Yeah, I'll start, and I think that I think that he's going to go to the Yankees. I think the Yankees are going to desperately want to get an outfielder. They right now, I think I heard earlier that their current outfield is obviously Judge, but then you've got like Esteban Florial and Jake Bowers are their other 2 outfielders right now, assuming that Stanton's the full-time DH. So um, like they really need an outfielder, and Bellinger can jump in and play center field immediately. Um, he's versatile. And I think that I think the Yankees are really going to want to go after somebody like him, left-handed bat that plays real well in Yankee Stadium, especially with his batted ball profile. Um, I have him signed in for 8 years, $180 million. I cannot believe I'm saying that he's going to sign for that much money after what happened, over the past few years. But then this year he obviously had the big bounce back year. I have seen some people's contracts that are even higher than that, and I kind of feel like he's going to get a little bit less than some people are kind of expecting because of the name value of the player. He had an awesome year this year, and I think he's a really good player going forward too. But I think that there are still some yellow flags about his batted ball profile and his exit velocities. And also, he's got that injury history. So I do think it might limit the amount of money he gets a tiny bit. But, 8 years, 180 after the things he's been through the last few years would be an awesome deal for him. And I think the Yankees are the team that'll give it to him.
Here's my thought process on Cody, because originally I had Cody penciled into the Cubs. After today, we got the sense on Otani, so I went ahead and moved Cody off the Cubs, and we also got the MLB trade rumors predictions today, which had Cody getting like 12 years, 240 something million. Um, that's excessive, I think. I don't think there's any shot he gets that level of contract, but I do think somebody's going to blow the market up. I always kind of thought that if he stayed around 150, 160, 170, that he would just return to the Cubs because they would automatically have the kind of the in that they don't have to lose a draft pick for going out and getting him, and they also until earlier today I didn't have them getting Otani, so it makes some sense to grab Cody Bellinger back. My pick for Cody going in free agency is the Toronto Blue Jays for like a 10-year, $230 million type of deal that blows the expected market out, but doesn't go totally crazy. Something that everyone gets kind of surprised about, like, wow, that seems like a lot, almost in the vein of Trey Turner, where you're surprised at the amount, but you're not surprised at the location. The Blue Jays desperately need left-handed hitting, and they traded for Dalton Varsho. He mostly played center field, but they were using Kevin Kiermaier out there, right? Like they needed a jolt in that offense to kind of go with Bo Bichette and Vlad Jr. And odds are they're only going to keep one of those guys going forward. So being able to move Cody to first base once Vlad Jr. kind of goes to free agency, that makes some sense. So I'm going to stick with the Blue Jays. I think the Yankees are a perfectly reasonable destination for Cody. I think he'll have a very robust market that's going to last a long time. But I think eventually somebody does blow it out of the water, and I've got the Blue Jays.
Yeah, the Blue Jays are not a bad pick at all. We've heard them be in on center fielders recently, anyways. So I could very well see that happening. I also agree with Matt. I'm going with the Yankees on this one. I said for 175. It kind of fits everything they need. He's the left-handed power bat that can be opposite of Aaron Judge there. He can play center field there, and then it also gives them some flexibility. They don't have Jason Dominguez this year. But when he comes back, Dominguez could potentially play left. Cody could play right if you're wanting to move Aaron Judge to more of a DH left field role. Or Anthony Rizzo, this is his last year of his guaranteed contract. He has a club option next year for, I believe, $17 million is what it was. Cody can easily play first base if Dominguez is back healthy and playing center field again. And it just fits everything that the Yankees kind of need. And then a lot of people don't really remember anyways, is that Cody's dad played with the Yankees. He was on those World Series teams in the late 90s, early 2000s. He was a reliever there, but he played there, and Cody spent a good amount of time in New York anyways, and around Yankee Stadium and the Yankee Way. So I could very easily still see, that being a connection there as well. So I had him going to the Yankees. I just feel like it's such a good fit with versatility wise, what he could be in that ballpark with a batted ball profile too. And then obviously having the history of his dad and kind of growing up there kind of might have a little bit more of a sentimental value too. So next, let's move over to Matt Chapman. David, we were just talking about the Blue Jays. Well, here it is. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and start with Matt Chapman?
Yeah, I'm with David on believing the Cubs are going to spend this offseason, and I've got them signing Matt Chapman. The reasons that I have that are that I think that, for one thing, the Cubs need a third baseman. This year they traded at the deadline for Candelario, and he played some third, even though he also played some first. They had Nick Madrigal playing a lot at third, Patrick Wisdom playing third a lot, which Patrick Wisdom really isn't a good third baseman. So they really need somebody to man that spot. And I think the Cubs have also kind of dabbled in that market of that Matt Chapman's in, kind of like a similar to the Dansby Swanson type market last year, where they went after the guy who had some upside and was an elite defender. There were some flaws in his offensive game, but he's also a really good player, and kind of in that not the number one free agent on the market, but a really solid major league free agent and a potential all star occasionally. So I think that's what Chapman is, and I think that's kind of where the Cubs are going to go here. I do think the Cubs will bid for Otani, but I think they're going to spend a lot on guys and make it more spread it around a little bit more if they're not able to get an Otani. But I got Matt Chapman to the Cubs.
I don't got that one, but
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
I'll refrain from continuing into the Cubs talk because we've talked about them a lot in the last first couple. Uh, and unfortunately I'm going to stick with another team we've already talked about. I'm going with the Yankees on this one. They're Donaldson shy from a few years ago, and this is a team that's been struggling for offense. I have them missing on Cody Bellinger to their division rivals, the Blue Jays, which I think is going to galvanize their spending a little bit. But I also think that they've invested a lot into the outfield, and it's going to be tough for them to put together over 200 million for tough to justify it. And it is the Yankees, so they don't really care about cost for over 200 for Cody Bellinger. But I'm going to say they're going to go grab Matt Chapman late in the winter uh, for 5 years, like 95 to 100 million, somewhere in there. Chapman did get the qualifying offer, which I think will hurt his market pretty badly. But I think is going to happen is that Damien's going to end up with the right pick on this one because Chapman's homes are not terribly large. I don't think there's a whole lot of teams looking at third base, and the Cubs do have Christopher Morel there that could, moonlight into third base if they don't move him in trade. So, um, I like where the Cubs are at third base. I think they can maybe make a trade for one, but I don't think they need to be spending at the top of the lineup there. It's just the Yankees they need something for offense, and that's where I'm going is Matt Chapman.
Listen, the Cubs have their third baseman, Nick Madrigal. They just need to play him. The Yankees part, I don't know. It just feels like they're so crowded on the infield, anyways, trying to figure out what they're going to do with Glaber and DJ, and I don't know totally if it makes a lot of sense for them on that aspect of it.
I have heard Glaber
Um,
being in trade rumors, for what it's worth.
maybe,
So
maybe, but then I don't know. We'll see. The guy that or the place that I picked Matt Chapman to go to is the San Francisco Giants. For a lot of the reasons that Matt was talking about earlier, they've been aggressive at trying to find a bat to come in there and play. And play for them. They've kind of been having at third base, having JD Davis a little bit here and there, Wilmer Flores here and there. Matt Chapman kind of just screams going to the Giants. First, started coming up in Oakland, so he's been in the Bay Area before. Farhan Zaidi, who is the general manager for President Baseball Operations for the Giants, was the assistant general manager of the year that Matt Chapman got drafted to the A's. He was really high on him at that point. And like we said, they've kind of been looking for somebody to come in there. Chapman kind of fits the profile of what these kind of analytical driven teams kind of look for. A really good defensive third baseman that hits for a lot of power. Um, the super big name, but he's a guy who can come in and immediately is going to be an anchor every single day for you there at third base. As they've kind of lost a lot of their pieces, they're kind of looking for that new guy, and I feel like Matt Chapman's kind of would be that for them. So I have them signing him at 5 years, $115 million. I just think it kind of fits a little bit too well to kind of pass up the opportunity for it.
he's also played with Bob Melvin as his manager before.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of all fits there. So let's move over to the pitching side once again, and this is kind of where we're going to start on a run of pitchers here. But let's start with the Philadelphia Phillies and with Aaron Nola. So Matt, what do you got for this one?
Yeah, for this one, I just think he's going to go back to the Phillies. I think they'll end up working it out with him. I think he's means a lot to that team. I don't think that they're going to value anybody else higher on the market than Aaron Nola. I think he'll probably be their number one target at starting pitcher, with the exception of I guess they would attempt to target Shohei Ohtani, even though I don't think he would want to go there. But and Shohei's not pitching next year, but uh, Nola's a guy who's been there his whole career. He's been their ace for his whole career. He's gets the opening day start most years, even with Wheeler there. He's gotten it a bunch of times. Like he's really a really big piece for them. And I actually think he's going to get a little bit higher contract than people are gonna predict for him. He had a little bit of a down year this year, but the peripherals were still really, really good, and he's been incredibly durable for his career. And that's something that I think is gonna help boost his value some because there's not as there's always going to be a lot of risk with a pitcher, but with his repertoire and his durability he's shown, and I think there's a good argument that he's going to be able to sustain it for longer than you would typically see from a pitcher. Maybe the risk might be a little bit lower for a free agent deal for Aaron Nola than for some other guys. So I'm going to pick him going back to the Phillies. I got him for 6,180.
Yeah, I think this is a very possible outcome is him just returning to Philly. I do think that teams are wary of giving up home runs, which is Nola's kryptonite. He is one of the best starters available, if not the best starter available, and he's typically very reliable in terms of innings pitched. He's a guy who gets a lot of innings, but he has been fairly inconsistent when it comes to quality of contact results. He's a guy who gives up a lot of home runs, a lot of hard hit balls. If his command isn't working well because he has the 93 to 94 mile an hour fastball versus some of these guys we're going to talk about later who throw 95 plus. I I think Nola gets a good strong deal. I just think it's going to be from the St. Louis Cardinals who overpay against what the Phillies expect. I'm thinking back to like Robbie Ray, Kevin Gossman, guys coming off of a Cy Young caliber year, but also some not so good years in the recent past. And those guys got around 115, 110 for 5 years. So I'm saying Nola gets 6 for 140 because I think the Phillies are going to offer in that range, 5 years, 120, 125 million dollars, and the Cardinals overpay and give him the extra year, and that's what sends him to St. Louis. They're very desperate for pitching. They're very desperate for reliability specifically, so that's why I have them targeting Nola. If it gets up to 180, I mean, I will be genuinely shocked. Uh, but again, that's kind of how free agency's gone. So I could be definitely underestimating this, but I have a feeling that Nola gets less money than we're predicting thus far. But still, more than like the Kevin Gossman, Robbie Ray tier that I feel like he's in as a pitcher.
Yeah, I think so. As far as the starting pitching market goes, arguably Nola's the top available starting pitcher outside of Shohei Ohtani, which we're already going to say he's not pitching this next year. Um, I think he's arguably that guy. I don't think that the command issues really like. I feel like part of it is he's had such a bad defense behind him for so long that he was trying to pitch too much for a strikeout at times. The defense improved slightly this year, but I just think that market's going to see that, and the market's going to take it to a place of where it's going to force the Phillies to kind of make the decision for themselves. I just don't think that you let Aaron Nola walk out of the door. I don't see the Phillies allowing that. I don't see John Middleton doing it. As much as he's put into this team in recent years with the Harper, with Castellanos, with Schwarber, with Trey Turner, like I don't see him letting, and even Zach Wheeler, I don't see him letting Nola just walk right out the door when they don't have that second kind of ace level pitcher or very good number two level pitcher right there at the top of that rotation. That's been a big strength for them recently. Especially in these playoffs, like going to be able to have Wheeler and Nola 1 and 2, and then figuring out the rest of it. It's a big advantage for them. And I just don't see them allowing Nola to really walk out the door that way. So I went with 6 at 150. I think kind of along the same things with David. We were talking about the 120-ish type area. I think the Phillies have to bump it up a little bit there. But I just think it makes so much sense. I think the fit is really well with Nola and Philly. They've been successful lately. It's been a big reason why. I don't know why they would want to kind of stop that marriage between the two of them. So I went Phillies at 6 for 150. So let's jump over to the most likely NL Cy Young pick this year, and that's Blake Snell. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth because honestly, I have no idea what Snell's market's going to look like. Um, I think that he's a really good pitcher. He's had a couple of awesome years. He's a weird one because his results were so good this year, but his peripherals were good, but not like crazy good. And not Cy Young caliber. And he's also got the innings question too. He doesn't ever pitch a ton of innings. Part of that's his control, drives his pitch counts up, but he's also been limited some by teams. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. I had him. I just picked him to the Red Sox because they need pitching. They're gonna spend on somebody, and I didn't really have anybody else that I thought they were going to spend on. So I picked them to the Red Sox, but I really have no idea what's going to happen with Snell.
Yeah, I have a specific vision for the Nola, Snell, Yamamoto, Jordan Montgomery quadric, group here. I believe Nola signs first, and I believe that the Phillies, kind of thought Nola would give them the hometown discount. He goes to the Cardinals, and the Phillies feel a little slighted, so they go out and grab the reigning NL Cy Young in Blake Snell, and they pay more than Nola got for the Cardinals, indicating, of course, that the Phillies were kind of withholding that money because they feel like Nola's down performance and inconsistent performance over the last couple of years is kind of warranting less of a contract. But Snell, obviously coming off the Cy Young, maybe he makes a little more money. I have him at 6'1", 65. I don't know. I think I'm right with you, Matt. I have no idea what Blake Snell's going to get here. His market might be one of the most interesting in that for a reigning Cy Young, I have zero confidence in him repeating that. And usually you have some confidence in repeating. In fact, I have confidence that Aaron Nola will be at least a 3-WAR pitcher who throws 200 innings next year. I got a good amount of confidence in that. It's just a matter of whether Aaron Nola will give up a bajillion home runs or have a 2 ERA. That's kind of the big question for when it comes to Aaron Nola. For Snell, I don't know. The walks could just totally, obliterate him. I mean, but it's a risky tightrope that Blake Snell walks, but he walks it with poise and precision. And I think the Phillies going out and getting an arm at the level of Aaron Nola is going to happen. But you guys have it being just bringing Aaron Nola back. I have it being Blake Snell. They will, I think, be signing one of these free agent starters. I think that's maybe the message we can send here.
Yeah, so David and I, between Nola and Snell, we've kind of flipped our picks here, because I have Blake Snell going to the Cardinals at 7-year, 170. The Cardinals, there was rumors late in this last year that they want to kind of change their philosophical look at how they do pitching and kind of get away from the low to kind of 92 to 93 fastballs with movement and go more to a like high fastball and then low breaking stuff type of pitcher. And that's kind of exactly what Blake Snell is. He kind of is that to the epitome. But looking at this Cardinals rotation right now, it's Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz is your number 2, Zach Thompson, Dakota Hudson, and Matthew Liberatore. Those are your options right now. They do have a good prospect in Gordon Graceffo. Don't know if he'll actually be ready for the season or not. But it just feels like if the Cardinals are going to compete, they're going to have to get a couple starting pitchers at least. I'm sure one of those is going to be in trade somewhere. They have so much depth within that middle infield and even outfield that they can kind of move one of those to get a pitcher there. But I don't see any trade markets for a left-handed pitcher. And especially one that kind of fits exactly what the Cardinals are going to be looking for if the change to this new philosophical look of pitching for them is true. That's Blake Snell. I mean, Blake Snell throws high fastballs that are hard, and then he throws a wipeout curveball and slider. Like he's really good at that. The walks would be an issue, but I don't think a team like that really cares all that much nowadays. I mean, this is also a team that we saw give a bunch of money to Steven Matz, who could never stay healthy either, right? Now, Blake Snell has thrown 180 innings twice in his career. Those 2 years, he's going to have won the Cy Young. So when he's healthy, he's able at the top level of this, of what he can do pitching-wise. I just think that the Cardinals, it just fits, I think, so well, especially with what they're trying to look at, that I think it's too good to pass up. for them. So let's jump over to another left-handed starting pitcher, and that's one that just won a World Series with Jordan Montgomery. So Matt, who you got for Jordan Montgomery?
Jordan Montgomery's just. I think he's going back to the Rangers. The Rangers obviously are willing to spend, and Jordan Montgomery's kind of a World Series hero there now. So I'd be surprised if they don't try to bring him back, and I think that they can get it done if they do. So I've got him just going back there.
It's funny that one requires very little analysis. I will say I disagree because the Rangers are putting Jacob DeGrom back in the rotation next year, at least, and
Well,
they just spent money on him. So, and I also have the Rangers signing somebody else down the way. Uh, you know, the Rangers are going to be aggressive, and I think Jordan Montgomery did enjoy his time there. But who really needs pitching that I haven't called for a starting pitcher yet, and neither have either of you guys, is the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I think Jordan Montgomery represents the stability that the Dodgers have been lacking in the rotation the last couple of years. We haven't mentioned Clayton Kershaw. It's he's got injury. He'll be out. He's also a free agent. Like the Dodgers have a lot of question marks there in the rotation. Will Walker Buehler be back? He's on a 1-year deal. That they're the rookies that they did have were all a little bit inconsistent with the exception of Bobby Miller. The Dodgers need to bring in some pitching, and I've got him bringing in Jordan Montgomery. I've got him for 6,150, but that contract may be a bit of a question mark given that Montgomery's success has been mostly the last year and a half specifically. We'll see what he gets on the market with, a power sinker type guy that pitches to contact a little bit more in a market that values swing and miss. But I like Jordan Montgomery, in his consistency and his stability going to the Dodgers.
It's funny that Montgomery's success has directly coincided with when he left the Yankees.
Amazing.
So the Dodgers, I don't hate it for him, especially that since they won't have to give up a qualifying offer or give up a draft pick because he doesn't have the qualifying offer to it. But I don't know. I feel like they're going to be so invested in the top of the market and pitching with the guy we'll talk about next, and then Ohtani, that they might let Montgomery slip through their fingers. But I kind of, for the same reason of what Matt said, I think the marriage between the Rangers and Jordan Montgomery just fits so well. There, we are uncertain with Jacob DeGrom with his Tommy John surgery, and this specifically being his second one, how long he's going to be out. You already know Max Scherzer has dealt with injuries throughout his later half of his career. You don't know how much you're going to get from him. Eovaldi's had a troubled injury history, although he was pretty healthy this year. He still dealt with some. There's just I just think that Montgomery is that solid guy every single day and give you a solid performance, that especially after his postseason run and seeing what he was able to do in the playoffs, this is a team that obviously is going to want to make it back to the playoffs. If you are able to have a postseason rotation of Jacob DeGrom, Jordan Montgomery, Max Scherzer, Nathan Eovaldi next year, like you're not caring about what the rest of your bullpen looks like at the moment. But I just think the marriage fits so well there between the two, and I don't see there's any reason why he would want to leave, knowing that they're going to try and be successful, and he's stable enough for them with the uncertainty they have in the rotation already anyways. So let's move over to, I'm not even gonna say it, I don't,
Yoshinobu Yamamoto.
There it is. I got it pretty close to start with. I'm gonna butcher that name talking about it, so I'm just gonna call him Yamamoto from now on. But Matt, what do you got for Yamamoto?
For the same reason that y'all have mentioned a couple of different pitchers, or I think of the Dodgers. I think that they really, really need a pitcher badly. I think with them missing on Ohtani, they've got money to spend on, and they'll probably be more willing to quote unquote break the bank on one. I think Yamamoto is probably going to be the most expensive pitcher on the market, even though I think Nola might be a little bit better right now. I think Yamamoto is going to be the most expensive due to his age. And I think that the Dodgers, they've signed guys from Japan in the past. Where Kenta Maeda came over from Japan. They've got the history with Hideo Nomo from years ago. I definitely think that the Dodgers will be on this one, and I like them to pick him up.
Look, a 25-year-old top of the rotation starting pitcher does not come available for just money very often. There should be 25, 30 teams interested in Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He throws upper 90s. He's very, consistent with the amount of pitches he throws. The Japanese workload is a little bit more lax when it comes to total workload, so he throws a lot more pitches over there. But it's worked out for you, Darvish. It's worked out for Kenta or Kodai Senga. The Japanese pitchers are no longer big risk factors like they were with Daisuke Matsuzaka and some of those guys, in the early 2000s, where they were either really good like Darvish or just really awful. I think we're at a point where we know who's going to be really good. I think Yamamoto is really good. And the one big market team that I haven't brought anybody to yet, who just signed a new GM, president of baseball operations, is the Boston Red Sox with Craig Breslow. The posting fee is going to muddy up this contract a little bit. I've got it at 10, or I've got it at like 10 years, 210 million. But the Red Sox desperately need pitching. They're going to be involved in all of these starting pitchers that we just talked about. But I think the one they can sell on their plan, the easiest, is the youngest, and that is Yoshinobu Yamamoto.
Yeah, you made it a good point with saying that it's very rare that a guy this young and this talented comes available for just money with no draft pick compensation, no having to draft anybody. Like, there's no development here. It's take the money and immediately just come into play right now. And I feel like for me, the place that I have him going is to the Giants. And it's kind of for the same reason we were just talking about. They have been super aggressive in the market the last couple of years. And this just screams like one of the guys that they're able to put on the top of this rotation with Logan Webb. And just kind of go forward with those two. You got a young Kyle Harrison coming up. They don't really have much other really solid starting pitching options at the moment. So he immediately fits in with them. They're able to be aggressive. They don't have to give up draft picks for him, especially since having to give up a draft pick for Matt Chapman there. I just think that if they're being aggressive here and they're trying to throw money around and they're going to need somebody here and somebody so young, so talented that they're going to have for a while, I feel like it fits there. So I went with 10 years, 225 million. I think there's going to end up being a bidding war for Yamamoto just because of all of those factors. And I feel like it's going to take the contract up a little bit. And I just feel like the Giants won't be outbid this time. I mean, they weren't outbid for Aaron Judge, and they missed there. So I feel like they're going to be willing to spend top flight money. So let's move over to our only reliever that we're actually going to predict this time and go to Josh Hader.
Yeah, honestly, with relievers, he could sign with anybody that is willing to spend money, because that's how relievers work. Everyone needs one. But I said the Cubs. I don't really think he's going to go to the Cubs, but um, they've got the Craig Counsell connection now. I think that that trade last year had a lot to do with Craig Counsell wanting out of Milwaukee. I think that the Cubs are willing to spend. They badly need a reliever. I figured that they would go for that. And earlier we were talking with David saying that the Cubs, Jed Hoyer says he's not going to sign a multi-year deal. Well, he also said David Ross was going to be the manager next year. So you can never take what they say is what the GM says is face value. So it's just I don't know. I mean, he could sign to like 15 different teams, and I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, my thought on that is not only has he said it, but he's also never signed one to 2 years.
Oh yeah.
So he's been GM for 3 years now and gone through 3 iterations of signing bullpen guys and still hasn't done a 2-year deal, much less a 5+ year deal for a guy like Josh Hader. So I don't anticipate that. I've got him going to the Rangers. That's the predominant one that I've seen from everybody else is straight to the Rangers, to lock down that bullpen, make that obvious improvement at the back end where you can, you lose out on Roldis Chapman, but you shift Leclerc to the 8th, you keep Sabores in the 7th. I mean, we've talked about that bullpen. I think, it helped them win the World Series, and I think Hader is an automatic upgrade and one for a team that isn't worried about draft picks, right, where they're losing the qualifying offer pick for Hader. And where their biggest weakness during the regular season was the bullpen, Hader locks that down. And so I think this is a match made in heaven for the Rangers.
Yeah, you want to talk about a guy who doesn't care about draft picks? It's Dave
That
Dombrowski.
is a guy who does not care about draft picks.
And the Phillies lost a couple postseason games this year due to a lack of back end bullpen help. They had Craig Kimbrell and he blew a couple games. You had Sir Anthony Dominguez, you had Ryan Kelly. Like they had a lot of guys. They have Jose Alvarado too, but all of those are just very, very futile. So I think that the Phillies are going to be super aggressive here. They're going to bring back Nola. You have the offense already set pretty much. You're going to bring in Josh Hader, be super aggressive. You don't care about the draft picks. John Middleton will want to lock down that back end of the bullpen. He'll spend all the money he needs. I think it's Josh Hader for 5 years, 105. And I did that specifically because he is going to want to break Edwin Diaz's record of 5 for 102. So I think he does 5 at 105 to jump over the Diaz contract. And I think it's to the Phillies. So let's jump over to Eduardo Rodriguez, who had a opt-out and declined a trade at the deadline. And now he's going to be a free agent. So Matt, what do you got?
Yeah, I've got him going to the Orioles. I think the Orioles really need some pitching. I think that they are probably going to be a little bit more willing to spend, with the recent 100-win season they had. I don't think they're going to spend a ton, but which means that they're not going to break the bank for one of the top starters. And this is going to be one of those guys that's going to be in that 20 million ish range. 4 years, 80 million is what I have. I think he's probably wants to prefer being on the East Coast after what happened at the trade deadline with him declining the trade to the West Coast. I think that was a big part of the reasoning. And I think that 4 for 180 with the Orioles is kind of a number I came to. So
Yeah, the one big market team that I think we've kind of forgotten about that did kind of die out with their pitching was the Houston Astros. And I'm going to say they're the ones who convinced Erod to move. I think the issue was him moving in the middle of the season. He didn't want to do that, and that's why he had the no trade clause in the first place. But if being able to move in the offseason, I don't think that's going to be a barrier. And I think Houston needs pitching, and he this kind of makes sense to me for some reason. Is the guy with a bit of control, but could definitely go to a place that's heavily analytical like Houston and take it up a notch wouldn't surprise me. So I have him going over joining Framber and Justin Verlander for a run in Houston at 4 years, like 75, 80 million. That seems pretty fair to me.
Yeah, so I have Eduardo Rodriguez going to the Cubs at 5 years, $90 million. I feel like it's a really good fit there. You have Steele, you have Kyle Hendricks, you're going to have Stroman's obviously out of there now. I feel like he has a good fit there. He'll pitch very well in that ballpark. He's obviously a big family type aspect person. We already mentioned with him declining the trade, he's had to be away from the team sometimes for some family stuff. And if there's any move that we've seen that's been a lot of family stuff, Craig Counsell. I mean, his big thing was about family. It's why he didn't want to leave Milwaukee, and he apparently wanted to go to the Cubs because it's close to family. So if anyone can sell Eduardo Rodriguez on knowing what it's like about wanting to be a family person and stay close to where you're at, Chicago to Detroit, it's not a big drive at all. He immediately goes in there. They're able to be aggressive and get a pitcher on that side. We'll talk about a bat here in a second. But I also think that they're able to just trade for another pitcher as well to maybe to help that rotation a little bit. So Eduardo Rodriguez to the Cubs for 5 at 90 is what I had. So let's move over to the 2021 World Series MVP in Jorge Soler.
yeah, I was a fun World Series MVP. But I've got him going to I just picked the Tigers. I honestly think his market is more of all 29 teams, and then the A's. Maybe not the Royals either because he's already been there. But like he's a guy that I don't think he's going to be worth us so much money that teams are going to be out on him. And the Tigers are kind of one of those teams that not they're not necessarily like a contender, but they might feel like if they add on around the edges a little bit that they could somewhat stay in the race in the Central, and that this might be a deal that they could use to just kind of add to their lineup a little bit and stay around in the Central and end up around 500 team, and you never know in that division. So I think the Tigers adding him for 3 years, $40 million is what I picked, but I don't. I have honestly have no idea who he ends up with. I think the 3 years 40, 3 years 45, somewhere in there is probably the number that he gets, but the team is just kind of a mystery to me.
yeah, if there was one singular team that contends or tries to contend year in and year out that desperately needs power, it's the Cleveland Guardians. And they've shown they're willing to spend around $20 million for a power bat in Josh Bell last offseason. What I expect is that Jorge Soler comes in, finally closes up the spot in the lineup behind Jose Ramirez, and gives them a power bat that's capable of hitting 40 home runs a year. I think they tried to do this with Bell, but it wasn't the right player. I think they give that kind of 20 million a year deal to Jorge Soler for 3 4 years, somewhere in there. It'll be a little bit crazy if they get quite past 60 million or so, but the Guardians typically sign one or two contracts a year. I think they go for a big power bat in Jorge Soler this offseason.
Yeah, so I'm doubling down on the Cubs here. I have them signing him for 3 years, $50 million, bringing him back to the place he made his major league debut and was a part of their farm system there. Big power bat that they're going to look to get some more offense um, into that lineup there, especially if they're going to be losing Bellinger. This is a guy who's going to come in and immediately score or be able to hit you a bunch of homers and be a consistent bat for you. So I went with the Cubs there. So let's move over to Sonny Gray now.
Yeah, so with Sonny Gray, I actually have him going to the Braves. I think the Braves badly need a pitcher. They have, they've got Kyle Wright out for the season next year. They've got, Spencer Strider, Max Fried. It's the 1-2. Then you've got Charlie Morton back now on a 1-year deal from they picked up his option. So I think but they really need another reliable arm. Charlie Morton's 40, and he wasn't available this postseason. Max Fried's dealt with injuries in the last few years. They really need another reliable arm, and I think that Sonny Gray might be a guy that could end up being that. At his 34-year-old age, I don't think his contract's going to be too big, and I think it's going to be a shorter term deal. So I think that the Braves are probably more willing to go in that shorter term, higher AAV market, and they've coveted him in the past before. So I definitely like the Braves for Sonny Gray.
I jumped on the notebook where we're doing this today to put Twins on Sonny Gray. I saw Matt had the Braves, and I went, "Oh my goodness, that's such a good pick." I'm going to stick with the Twins. I just re-signing Sonny Gray, bringing him back. I think they can't. They had such a good rotation this year. I don't feel like they can get rid of him. And what I do believe is that the Twins have kind of an idea of their next 3 or 4 or 5 years, so they can give Gray more years and more security, and that ends up trumping his desire to make more overall cash, which keeps him in Minnesota. So I'm gonna say they give him 5 years, which does seem to age 39. But I also think that that's they signed Carlos Correa for a 6 year deal. They kind of have a 5 6 year plan. So I think they're comfortable with that. I obviously could be wrong, and I think the Braves are a really really good fit for Sonny Gray, but if he's craving more years, more security, and more familiarity, I think he stays in Minnesota. If he's hunting a ring, I think he goes to Atlanta.
Yes, for Sonny Gray, I just felt like he liked Minnesota. He performed really well there. I think that Minnesota will obviously want to bring him back and keep him at the top of that rotation with Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan. It was a big strength for them this season in general, too. So I just have the Twins signing him 4 years, $80 million, give him $20 million a year, give him that little bump that he's kind of looking for there, and it doesn't hurt you too much in the long run. And you guys obviously have enjoyed each other through the both from both sides of it. They've had success. So Sonny Gray to the Twins, 4 years, $80 million for me. So let's jump over to Marcus Stroman now.
Yeah, so since the Twins in my predictions lose Sonny Gray, I've got them going after another pitcher, and that pitcher ends up being Marcus Stroman, who should get a pretty similar contract. And he's a pretty similar type of pitcher to Sonny Gray. He's going to pitch, got a really good sinker and his splitter and everything, and going to pitch to some contact. I mean, Sonny Gray does have pretty good strikeout numbers for his career, but both guys kind of similar. They're probably number three rotation starters. They're up. Stroman's not really old, but he's had some injury questions. I think that 3 or $60 million should get it done, and I think he's going to. I just felt like the Twins would probably be a player for him.
That's really not a bad fit there. I'm going with the Giants. I think the Giants are in my scenario here. The Giants have not gotten a starting pitcher yet, nor have they really gotten any bats, and so they've missed out on a lot of things. I think they try to retool a little bit, and Stroman fits nicely in the Giants, who's a team that's kind of more focused on that infield defense. You know, I don't anticipate him getting as much money as you guys do. You know, he was an all-star at the beginning of last year, but in the second half, he was downright horrible, due mostly to injuries. And I'm wearing my Stroman shirt right now, but he did not have a good second half. And I mean, everybody in the Cubs sphere felt like he was going to opt in, and he didn't, which I think tells me he's looking for more years. So 2 or 3 years, 40-ish million. 'Cause he was going to make 21 million, right? So, but I have a hard time feeling like any MLB team's going to give him more than 2 seasons. And the report is, he doesn't like to attend like team meetings before the games and stuff. So you need a front office and a group that's a little more casual. And I feel like over in San Fran, they're at least a little more lax. But we'll see. I think Stroman's is going to be one that drags on maybe into spring training before he signs.
Yeah, see, I have Stroman going to a place where you guys have both had a starter sign yet. I haven't, and that's with the Boston Red Sox. Craig Breslow's coming over from Chicago over to Boston. They need a starter, and he's not going to really, break the bank here. I think that he was going to make, what do you say, $20 million this year. I think he's also looking for that more security. So I have him going to the Red Sox at 4 years, $75 million. He also just kind of seems like he would fit in Boston really well, which would be a funny fit, but I feel like he would gel right with those fans. So 4 years, $75 million. I have him going to the Red Sox. So the last one that we're going to predict on a long form style is Rhys Hoskins.
Yeah, I have Rhys Hoskins go to the Cubs. I don't really know why. I think the big reason is because I think the Cubs have a lot of contact in their lineup, and they could probably use another power bat. I think this is kind of what they had in mind when they signed Trey Mancini last offseason, and he ended up not working out. I think Hoskins would be a similar type of signing, but I think Hoskins has a higher chance to work out than Trey Mancini did. I got him at 2 for 35. I think that would get it done. He can play first base, where the Cubs don't really have an established first baseman right now. They were playing Cody Bellinger there a lot this year, Candelario. I know that Matt Mervis was a prospect that they really liked, but he really struggled in the big leagues. So this gives them at least an insurance policy if he doesn't do super well this year and doesn't figure it out. So I've got the Cubs getting Rhys Hoskins.
Just so you guys know, you both gave the Cubs right-handed bats, and the Cubs have 5 starting right-handed players right now and 1 left-handed player, Ian Happ, and they lost Cody Bellinger. So I mean, they might get a right-handed guy, but Matt's got him getting 2. I just don't know that that's the best move for the lineup. I do
You're
have
going to
them.
have PCA too.
Yeah, well, is
He'll
PCA going to be
play.
a good enough bat? Yeah, that's where
Still
I'm
a
at. So
left-handed bat.
it's a left. Yeah, well, anyway, I got Rhys Hoskins to the Mariners. I think this is the sneaky move that the Mariners pick up on. Obviously, I think they're going to be involved in like the Ohtani talks. I'm sure the Mariners are going to be involved in some of these position player talks that we went through. Um, and I think they'll be looking for the more contact-centric DHs. So I don't know if Rhys is particularly their best bet here, because that's a lineup featuring Eugenio Suarez and some of these other guys that Jerry Kelenic, that's just swing and miss a lot. I'm expecting them to try to find more contact. So maybe Rhys Hoskins isn't the move, but I do expect the Mariners to be hunting heavy in this DH first base spot. And Rhys Hoskins kind of pairing him up with Ty France to kind of DH and first base as needed. I kind of like that move. Also could use Ty France as a trade chip. Just a interesting little spot there for the Mariners. I think they might even be most active on the trade market with all those starting pitchers they have there.
Yeah, so this is just a boring pick for me, but I just have Rhys Hoskins going back to Philadelphia, coming off the torn ACL and not being a part of what they were able to do this year. I just feel like he's going to want to be back there. And I think I have him on a 2-year deal for $38 million. I also think that he'll have an option in there, either if it's a club or it's a mutual, or maybe it's a club that with like so many plate appearances or something becomes a player option. I just think that he's going to want to be back there. It kind of works with them right now, and keeping on a shorter term deal there allows you to have, Schwarber be a DH again. And then you can still work in Harper playing a little bit of first to keep him off there too, and Hoskins to DH. I think it just fits all around with what the team wants to do. So I have him going back to the Phillies for 2 years, 38 with some sort of a option worked in there. So do we want to hit the rapid fire ones real quick?
Let's do it.
All right. Teoscar Hernandez. Go real quick.
Shoot, Diamondbacks
Ooh.
replacing Lourdes Gurriel.
I like that,
Ooh.
actually. I like that a lot. I was going to go Phillies replacing Reese, but he can actually play the field.
Ooh. All right. I think Giants.
Nice.
I think it'll be a good one. JD Martinez.
Back to the Dodgers.
Yeah, since I got Ohtani going to somewhere else, I got him Dodgers.
I guess since I have Ohtani going elsewhere too, Dodgers. Justin Turner.
I think you could see him stay with the Red Sox.
I will say he goes to one of them upstart teams. I'll give him the Diamondbacks this time.
Okay.
I think he goes to the Cubs.
I don't hate that. I think that might be my favorite one of the Cubs ones we mentioned so far in terms of bats.
Craig Counsell made a big run at him in 2020 before he re-signed with the Dodgers, and the Cubs could use that, and he's contact orient based, and he could play some first base.
Yep,
kind of works. Shoto Imanga.
I'll go with Giants.
This is my Orioles play.
Yeah,
it's interesting. It's a good one. I say this one's tough too. Red Sox. That fits. Lourdes Gurriel.
I'll say maybe the Astros.
Interesting. Okay. I'm going to send Lourdes Gurriel to the Red Sox, replacing Justin Turner.
Okay. I say Lourdes Gurriel goes to Seattle.
Replacing Teoscar Hernandez.
Replacing Teoscar Hernandez.
There is more contact there. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, last but not least, Jeimer Candelario.
It's a tough one.
Marlins.
I don't hate that. Yeah, maybe the Marlins. I actually kind of like that.
They got to do something.
Yeah.
Blue Jays.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Yeah, that makes sense. He could replace
Chapman. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Chapman. I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna go with you, Damian. That makes a lot of sense. I'm going Blue Jays.
Yeah. So that will wrap up the free agent predictions part of it. Real quick before we head out, I just want to bring it up because it's always milestone numbers, but this is episode 150 for the podcast, which I think ever since we started it in 2020, Matt and I don't think we ever thought we would hit anywhere close to 150 episodes. So that we're at this point, I think it's a big accomplishment. I can't thank everyone enough that's been a part of being on this episode or on any of these episodes, listening, liking, subscribing, everything. Just listen to us ramble on about nonsense and baseball all the time. So we're at hit 150 episodes officially today. So thank you, everybody. I don't know if you guys want to say anything.
No, it's just it's been a lot of fun. I enjoy talking baseball with y'all every week, and it's been great. And looking forward to 150 more.
I haven't been around for all of them, but I'm glad for the ones I've been here for. And this is a fun episode. This is one of my favorites every year, doing the free agent predictions. This one was awesome. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the offseason with you guys.
Absolutely. And we'll have a lot more off-season talk and breaking down all of these signings and trades that happen. So thank you guys for tuning in to episode 150 of the Bat Flip podcast, and we'll catch you guys back next